I want to share with you what I call the gospel of active code enforcement. I perfected this process more than 10 years ago of identifying vacant, abandoned, blighted properties in cities and then turning them over into active development projects, Habitat for Humanity, affordable housing, gardens, playgrounds. The bottom line is this. I want you to think about your city. Every single city in this state, in this country, has pockets of blight. And the single most important thing that I want you to understand as a community leader is that code enforcement and title problems are the single largest driver of blight. Let me say that again. The single largest driver of blight in communities all across this state are title problems, because if we could deliver clear title to a piece of property, it could be transferred to Habitat or a next door neighbor or whatever who would move in and make use of that property. But tens of thousands of properties all across this state are gummed up with a quagmire of title mess. And I realized this more than 10 years ago. And I realized that there is only one party that can solve that problem. And that's the local government, right? Because the banks don't have an interest in it. Heirs that, grandma and granddad died 10, 20 years ago, they don't have an interest in doing it. The only one that has an interest in clearing title to these properties is local government. And I'll take it one step further. It's not just that a mayor, city council, that local government entity has an interest. I tell you that it's an absolute imperative, because when you are in charge of that jurisdiction, the boundaries of that jurisdiction are solely within your control and jurisdiction as the local elected officials. And you have a duty to maximize and bring into highest and best use every single parcel of property located within that jurisdiction. And part of the reason is utilities. When we draw out a map of a neighborhood or a city, put those pipes in, put those wires in, every other taxpayer is responsible for those. And we cannot have any significant number of lots of parcels that are not part of that bonding process paying into the utilities. And yet that's what happens in cities all across this state, all across this country, Miami, Orlando, or whatever else. And the reality is it's concentrated in areas that are nearest the city core. So I think about Tampa as an example, but again, Orlando, Miami, you name it. These neighborhoods that were developed decades ago and then were abandoned because of urban sprawl, those are the ones that we really need to be concentrating our effort in. So what happens is I was aware in St. Petersburg, just a couple blocks that direction, we had a rough area. It's an area that had been abandoned largely and was blighted. And yet you would drive up and down the streets and there was vacant lot after vacant lot. So, more than a decade ago, we had this really thoughtful, great mayor approach things like a CEO and said, let's do something about that. I had a background for years before that defending consumers and doing real estate. And he said, Matt, what can we do? I said, it's easy. We started foreclosing on these properties. And the side effect of this was the money. I mean, nobody had any idea how much money was sitting there. But we collected millions of dollars immediately. And again, it just blew the mind of the mayor and the staff people that worked on that. I'll never forget the first report to city council. Jaws dropped and multiple city council members said, I cannot believe what has happened here, because typically, you do a government program and it does not fulfill expectations. This one blew the doors off expectations. So what we realized really quickly was this was not just about collecting the money. We had the first line of properties that go up to a public auction, and developers started buying these things. And the light bulb went off that, wait a minute, we could invigorate an entire area that had been looked over, that had been forgotten, that was blighted, if merely we could get these vacant lots onto the auction steps and into the hands of builders and developers. And sure enough, that's what happened. I really draw attention to this Florida Trend article here that details this. I mean, it identifies property after property in an entire area that we were able to move into active development. Now, That started 10 years ago. I can tell you right now, that is one of the most thriving, economically viable, and exciting areas of the city because what we started just kind of kept going lot to lot, an area to area, expanded out an entire area. And look, we know that St. Petersburg became sort of a golden child of local government, and a big part of it was thoughtful programs like this one that occur. There's another element in this that's really important in 2026 that I want local government leaders to focus on. I know local DOGE is a problem. It's a irritation. I get it. But like it or not, it's here. And I'm going to tell you that this is a powerful way to respond to the mandate of DOGE. Active code enforcement is perhaps the easiest, most proactive way that you as an elected official can respond to the next round of DOGE audits and reporting and saying, hey, we got the message, we're doing something about it. And here's what this looks like. So every single city maintains a code enforcement department, and that code enforcement department pays salaries for cars and for salaries and for insurance, maintaining a whole department, right? Well, all you have to do is document these liens. Go to the code enforcement department, tell us what exists, how much is there, and then that allows you to report back to DOGE. We have identified X that had previously been uncollected. It's not even on the books. There's another technical component of this that's really important, and that is for reasons that make no sense whatsoever. The millions of dollars worth of liens that exist in favor of cities and counties are not reported on the CAFRs. And that just does not make any sense. You know, the audited financial reports contain every other debt, every other liability, every other asset. Recorded liens are a absolute asset in favor of taxpayer, in favor of the municipality, and must be reported on the CAFRs. Again, I think there's going to be a change coming up that is going to require this because it just makes sense. I can tell you that in my experience and investigation and looking in cities, I found that over and over again, these things are just ignored, right? These being liens. And when you go back and pull public records, again, back to that Florida Trend article, it turns out that there were $300 million worth of liens out there owed to the taxpayers of Pinellas County that had not previously been recorded or accounted for. The reporting was simple. Pull the records up, identify those liens. It allows you as the code enforcement department, it allows you as a city manager to report back to the city council, county council, and say, guys, I identified $100 million owed to the taxpayers of this community. And you know, jaws are going to drop. Whoa, Mr. City Manager, what do you mean $100 million are owed? Yeah, these are all liens. $100 million is owed to this community. Now, there is a thoughtful way to go about collecting that. You know, we're not going after Homestead. We're not going after sympathetic parties. But the other big secret about this, not a secret, it's all right there in black and white. The other big issue about all this is so much of that $100 million is owed by foreign corporations. And again, the imperative here is understanding that when you are an elected official, a manager, city attorney, county attorney, you have a duty to represent the citizens in your community. And if the citizens in your community understood that hundreds of millions of dollars was owed to my community by foreign corporations or people that had walked away and abandoned property, and you as a city manager, you as a city attorney, you as a mayor, council, were not collecting that, it should be a cause for great concern because you are increasing my tax burden as a taxpaying citizen by allowing all these other out-of-state foreign corporations not to fulfill their burdens and obligations to take care of their own property. I have more than a decade worth of proof of concept of this. That Florida Trend article is one thing. I've got hundreds of cases out there that have been successfully prosecuted, trial court, appellate court, into federal court even, bankruptcy court. And the imperative and the lesson of that is the courts say that you have the right, the legislature says that we have the right under Chapter 162 to do this. That right comes with it a mandate. So the call to action to you as an elected official is to understand this concept of code enforcement, the gospel of active code enforcement. If you're a citizen watching this, share this with your elected officials and ask them, why are we not pursuing this? I promise you what will happen eventually. There will come a time when the concept of active code enforcement is an integral part of every single municipal government. It just has to be. There's too much money on the table. There's too much property on the table. There's too much proof of concept that this just works and is simple and is powerful and effective. So the call to action is this: understand active code enforcement. Adopt the gospel of active code enforcement and put it to work in your community.